Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the latest Marketing Week webinar called Convert and Cultivate, how companies can maximise engagement with their customer. Just to introduce myself first, my name is Thomas Hobbs and I'm a reporter for Marketing Week. The Marketing Week team is delighted to be running this webinar today, which is in partnership with digital marketing research and technology firm Toluna, which operates social voting communities. Branded communities are becoming bigger and bigger for marketeers, both for engagement and as a research tool. And today, we're going to look a lot deeper into this trend. The presentation should last around half an hour to 45 minutes, and there will be a Q&A session at the end. If you'd like to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question tab at the top of the player, and it's a great opportunity to take away some more personal learnings. As the host of today's webinar, I'll put as many questions possible to our speakers at the end of the presentation. Just so you know, this webinar will be archived onto the Marketing Week website on its own portal, and there is also a Toluna playbook available for download as an attachment on the slides. Anyway, without further ado, I'll now hand you into the capable hands of Paul Twite, formerly of Haymarket and United Business Media. He is now the Managing Director of Toluna's business in the UK. Go ahead, Paul.
Hi, thanks Tom, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I think I've been with Toluna about 5 years, and what's most interesting since I joined is the incredible growth, as Tom was alluding to, in technology products and communities in particular. The clients have grown in number, usage of our platforms every year, and there's some key drivers to this adoption. The technology allows automation, efficiency, and new horizons and insights at unprecedented speeds, by blending different data sources with real-time respondent answers. Toluna's social voting community, which is the bedrock of actually our technology platform, has now grown to have more than 9 million community members in over 46 markets. So what that offers is real multilingual capabilities, but also, frankly, real learning by experience. We've probably made every learning there can be made on communities, and we try and pass that on to our customers. We're currently helping more than 150 brands with their online community strategies across the globe, and some of the examples I'll give today will be from literally every continent, and we'll try and make those as relevant as we can to your needs. We've also got clients in virtually every sector, from farming to fragrances and from charities to cruise lines. They also represent every, I think, phase of the marketing life cycle. So we've got new product development happening for manufacturers, we've got creative pre and post testing for marketing departments, planning and buying for media agencies, and then sort of placement and messaging for media owners. So it really is a broad mix and a broad church, and I'll try and pull out, say, relevant examples. I mean, one thing we did recently for Sony on a panel they built and segmented was we did the X Factor testing. So what they like to do is see out of the X Factor contestants which ones cut through with certain segments. So we really do try and put colour and depth into the hands of the marketing and market research departments. Over the last years, we've also run user tests, in-home user tests, the likes of Procter & Gamble, and done those in the UK and Russia. We've also worked with agencies and owners like Immediate Media, and we've looked at their brands such as Radio Times, Good Food, Top Gear, and seen how their brands affect core brands such as Lexus and Tag Heuer. So we've really worked across the marketing piece. In marketing, for this event, there was a fairly broad-ranging remit, but we're trying to focus on 3 core things. ROI, so getting your money back, blending of data with social media activity, and case studies of how clients are using communities to gain competitive advantage. Before we dive into that, I'm just going to briefly touch on what a community is. People define it in different ways, and many people define a community by what you can do with it. So you can do quote-unquote research, fusion of behavioural data with attitudinal research. You can look at the ability to look at people's changing the behaviour over time, and we're seeing these regularly come up with our clients. But in essence, at Toluna, we define as a community as an ongoing dialogue with the people that will help to shape the future of your company. So before we delve into why community is important, I wanted to state the obvious. Markets and the communities the opportunities they present are moving faster than ever. One of our clients recently presented the time pressures he and his team of 4 researchers were now under to deliver insight. And what this looked like is that driving category strategy might be a 2 to 3 month brief internally. Looking at specific business-related questions might be a 1 month brief. And then looking at sort of product development feedback cycles might be 2 weeks. But now with the pressure in the real pressure in the business is actually to answer questions from retailers, and you might get 3 to 4 days to do that, and actually emergency questions. So what's going on now, today, and actually impacting the business? So these could be topical issues affecting the wider UK public. It could be the potential carcinogenic impact of processed meats, which reared its head this week. It could be the healthy eating crusades from celebrities like Jamie Oliver. But these are having real-time impacts on brands. And because of the advent of social, you've got to be on top of it immediately. There's no longer a consideration phase that allows researchers and marketeers to think. So what is certain is that we'll see more and more demands for quick answers. And these will continue to be placed on smaller and smaller teams. And the more information that can be layered seamlessly into the reporting and decision-making process, the better. So we'll try and show you some examples where we're lining that information up. So we've got transactional data, or we've got social data, and we're overlaying that into the community. It's critically important. We know where our most valuable customers are now, and also where they're going to be in the future. So, we're also critical we talk to them in the most appropriate manner. So this means maximising a brand's impact wherever there is a touch point with a consumer. And that's the critical thing. What we've seen is we actually service, I'd say, 80% of the world's top research firms. And when they're researching marketing, what we're actually get a good feeling for what's going on across the globe. And there's definitely more marketing and research happening focused on the broadcast messaging, so the advertising, PR and promotional side. We run creative pre-testing for numerous TV programs, movies, trailers, adverts. We also run the post-testing for TV shows, channels, efficacy research for sponsorship around sporting and cultural events, plus reach studies for channels, category sponsorship, etc. on terrestrial and paid TV. But while there's heavy investment in social from the marketing side, so social, white papers, SEO, etc., we're not seeing the same level of actionable insight being driven from the research in these areas. So it's just interesting that we're seeing the initial UI testing of websites, but we're not actually seeing people drive very deep into these areas, these pull areas of marketing. So what we're trying to do is also show how we can append that data, so we can see that how these pulled messages are affecting the user. So and also we'll move on to ROI. So first of all, I suppose if we look at ROI, there is an industry-wide report called the GRIT report. It goes out, I think this year it covered about 1,800 market research professionals, and it indicated that clearly online communities are huge in terms of adoption at the moment. Over 50% of marketing research professionals are using them, and they lie only second to mobile surveys as an area of interest in terms of new methodology. I think what's interesting now is that if you take those emerging methods, as the GRIT report calls it, now communities cover all aspects of that. So we can now append mobile phone studies, in the moment diary research, through to text analytics, to big data, and they're all being brought to bear in the community environment. So as well as the types of methods we're using, it's also worth looking at how people are using these tools. So these are just tools, and actually it's worth looking at how these tools are being used from a research perspective. So if we look at a study we did earlier in the year, this is of our customers and how they're using research. And what you're seeing is a consistent or growing level of usage among 88% of the customers, and it's the breadth of research being conducted that's interesting. 88% say they're using a rather generic, better understanding of customers. But because of the speed of response, communities are also being used for idea creation, for feedback on product development and usage, and also to study customer satisfaction in real time. So, we've sort of touched on the adoption, I suppose, of communities, and we see that more than 50% of people are already using them, and also the usage. But let's also look specifically at ROI. We asked our customers as well, were they getting better value out of communities than traditional research? And what we're finding is that 72% of our customers are saying they're getting more insight for the same amount of money and getting greater value out of their out of their marketing spend. And I think this is especially true if you're targeting a niche audience. So if you're looking at, I don't know, charitable givers or fundraisers, if you're looking at enthusiasts of a certain product type or activity, or you're looking at key decision makers for a particular product range, if you build that community, you can then access them quicker and cheaper, frankly, than you would through traditional market research methods. And again, we're seeing that 90% of our clients will continue to put communities at the heart of their research plans. Okay, so let's look at specific examples. You're going to have to forgive my Italian because I don't have any, but Gruppo 24 Ore are one of our leading media owner clients. They're in Italy, and they run what's called the pink paper. So it's very similar to financial paper to our own Financial Times. And what was interesting is they had a particular challenge. They had a very, very broad reach, both in print and online, with an audience of 13 million daily. And then they also had incredible demands on their insight team. It was a fairly small insight team based in Italy. And what they were finding is they were getting consistent requests for information. And frankly, it was high cost and slow turnaround. They were trying to find the answers on consumer behaviour, what their audience wanted. And it was fairly critical for them as an organisation because of budgetary constraints and everything else that they redefined the way they did it. So what they decided to do in 2009 is set up a community. And what that enabled them to do is to hit the speed metrics that their internal stakeholders wanted in terms of research and deliver a much greater quantity of research. They could then overlay segmentations, which really changed the way that they started to do things. So the community has now been put at the very heart of their business. The panel is used to segment the audience, so it's tailored to its audience in all media types. So they become, if you like, the advisory board internally to the editorial directors. They're able to test creative for clients amongst those segments and feedback directly to the internal stakeholders on the impact that Gruppo's media properties are having. What's really interesting is it's become so relevant, the research, that now the media owners' clients are actually paying to research amongst that audience. So it's actually become a revenue generation, that insight team. Now, I totally understand that not all of us would want to sell access to our audience, but for Gruppo, it really has cemented their relationship with clients. It's absolutely emphasised the research team's value within the organisation, and it's become central to everything they do. Now, this journey, if you like, was a 5-year journey. And it shows the level of investment they put in terms of time and resource to really put this at the heart of what they do. But what I thought I'd do is show the first 8 weeks. What was critical is they were already spending money on research. So they sat down and mapped out the types of activities they were doing and how they could enhance them through a community website. So it was critical that if they were looking already into audience behaviour, that they could really get into the attitudinal statements in the same way they were doing with traditional research. It was about offering something not only different, but better. So when they first started, they started layering in the community with their traditional research platforms, and then they removed them. And actually a launch date, they were ready to say, actually, we are going to fund, we're going to put an initial investment in. In this case, it was actually 100,000 euros, hence the lack of a sign on that. And they had that research value back within an 8-week period. And as I was saying earlier, the research activities were run in parallel to the creation of the portal, with gradual involvement of the panelists ensuring the quality of the data. And when the community went live, this roadmap was absolutely central to what they wanted to do. Now the community uses a full range of research techniques to interact with customers. It has discussion forums, obviously Q&A studies, mobile journeys undertaken by the audience. And it's become pivotal to what they're doing. Okay, now this is obviously a very specific example. As I said, not every client one would want to sell access to its own audience, and you want to keep it for your own research. And the other, I suppose, pivotal question is, what if you don't have an audience of 13 million for your panel? So clearly there are some people in specific positions, such as media owners, who have access to vast amounts of data. So what I thought I'd do is continue with this research we did with our clients earlier in the year, and just show you how people are recruiting. So what you can see here is the nature of recruitment sources that people are using. It doesn't add up to 100%, I noticed immediately, and that's because obviously people are using multiple sources. Now, over the years, we've recruited everything from Doctor Who fans through Facebook for BBC Worldwide, to a community of people that like to buy cruises, people who want to buy chicken, people who want to buy train tickets. I mean, we've done an awful lot of recruitment, and we've seen now real benefits. What we find is that the recruitment, traditional research, I think the recruitment methodology was seen as absolutely key, and they would view recruiting from a customer list or social media as a skewed data set. And actually, we think it's an incredibly rich theme of data to explore. So it can have real value. The recruitment can also mean that you focus not only on ideal purchases or stated purchases, but you can add social media users, and you can add existing customers and existing databases. And the idea of multi-sourced approaches helps deepen the insight generated. As the different information sources can be layered, as we said. And I think what we'll try and do over the next few slides is show you examples of how behavioural data can be used, social media activity can be used, and competitor customer recruitment can be used through research panels, and how our clients have been doing it. Okay. We touched on this, and blending transactional, social media, behavioural, attitudinal data is obviously very, very key, and a lot of marketing companies and businesses are talking about this at the moment. I think what's interesting for us is there's incredibly effective blending of data going on. There was quite a lot of press recently about our work with dunnhumby and the evolution of a product they developed called the Behavioural and Attitudinal Research product. The acronym was BAR, which I think everyone in media liked. But what it enabled them to do was to target people by specific spend details. They always knew what customers were doing in real time through loyalty card data. And now what we've added for them is the why they're doing it. And I think that's pivotal. I think people can go down some blind alleys when you start fusing behavioural data. If you look at the outputs from following one person's mobile phone activity for one day, we've worked with a number of other suppliers, and they are producing terabytes of data. And actually just having raw data dumped on your desk is incredibly it can leave you totally overawed. And the critical thing is to decide what you're going to do with that data. So we'll try and pull out some specific examples. First, let's look at customer lists. So we're going to throw a few brands up that we've recruited for over the years, and this is from customer lists. And what this does is obviously build very cost effectively a community for you, but it also means you can append a whole raft of data. Clearly, your relationship with the customers is key, and some brands don't have a direct relation with customers, but there's increasingly rich data available across the sectors. On these brands, you can see it's more obvious in retail and financial services, but also we're seeing it in charities and universities. And with the critical thing is getting the right opt-ins and consent levels from respondents. You clearly are in a position of absolute trust when you build a community, and you have to have their explicit consent for any data matching or data you're going to do. But we found that broadly, the clients' relationships with brands, and if you're explicit in what you're going to do, you often find people are very willing to opt in, and I'll show you some opt-in rates later from specific studies we've done. So the way you can blend in transactional data, it could be good old-fashioned offline traditional visits to stores, it could be frequency to visits online, it could be basket size, either off or online, and what you can do is then overlay attitudinal research to show levels of engagement with the brand. I think an example we've got in the university sector, actually on the slide, was in the university sector. There's been incredible legislative shift, and there's been a real shift from students being students, as they were in my day, to being customers, and the competition for those customers is fiercer than ever. So the longitudinal relationship of a community means that you can then look at the journey of the student from the initial point of marketing, perhaps when they're doing their A-levels, to potential joiners, to satisfaction while on campus, and then critically through to the alumni programs, looking at fundraising. So you get lovely longitudinal reach where you can start saying, actually, how has our relationship or that person's relationship over time changed? Let's go into one specific example that we carried out for Hilton Hotels. If anyone wants more depth on any of these, I'm aware that it's 3:20 on a Wednesday afternoon, and I'd much rather bounce through these, and then if you've got any further questions, ask them. But for Hilton, what was interesting, they were able to obviously use their customer data, overlay the customer loyalty card status, if any, of those people that joined the panel, and then see specifically the cut-through and efficacy of their distinct product offerings. for each of those loyalty bands. So if you overlay an engagement segment on the loyalty card data, you can then see how likely your key customers are to stay and where the most critical elements are of your offering, so that you know how you're trying to track them. It's also actually possible to see how these offers are cutting through with competitors' customers, and also to overlay how competitors' offerings are cutting through with your customers. So it can give you a really strong roadmap in terms of how you talk to your customers and also where you're talking to them. So by overlaying, say, spend with engagement, you can really drive this forward, and you can get these responses back to your key stakeholders incredibly quickly. So it's a very powerful way of doing it. So there are numerous examples where we're taking transactional data, using those segmentations, and then overlaying attitudinal statements or engagement statements to make sure that we're really, our clients are targeting exactly the right customers now and in the future. Let's look at another source of recruitment. If you're not using transactional data, there's also social media, and this has become incredibly popular. I think what's interesting is a common theme among our clients is they have an incredibly frequent exposure on social media to their most vocal customers, but not enough depth and analysis of their most important customers or prospects. So we've got a lot of clients in the gaming industry, and on their community websites, they want to talk about how to get to the next level. Are there any cheats? Are there any glitches? They don't want to talk necessarily about core issues of product development. So what they do is recruit them online into panels, and then they can tailor the discussion. They can really, you can ring fence discussions. You can set one group talking about that perhaps doesn't matter to you as much, but one subject matter, and then making sure your key customers are really discussing the issues that are important to your business, and so you can drive them forward. I think what's most interesting is that you can also then add their social media data and add context. So you can start analysing how your community members influences amongst their peer group. So you can really start seeing if these people are important, one, to your business, but important also socially, you can really focus on them. So if we take that out, let's pull that out into one example. I think we worked with Discovery Channel. Now this project was actually cut through in Southeast Asia for them, and they were launching two different brands. The Discovery Channel clearly had a very large footprint in Asia, and they were launching D-Max, and the D-Max calling card was stretch your limits with new channel designed for guys who live life to the max. And Eve was going to be the new factual entertainment network that brings an unabashed female perspective to the world. So two very clear segments, if you like, and in essence, men and women. And they followed a very traditional research methodology at first, which is you send out a survey. In this case, it was 500 people per market, and they were looking at testing concepts, with text descriptions, with ads, and they were saying, actually, we're going to check how these brands will cut through and where they'll be most relevant. I think what's most interesting about this is the key differences, and you can't really see it on this slide, but the community was embedded into Facebook, and what that enables them to do is then to append a whole raft of interesting data to the traditional survey. So at the end of the traditional survey, Facebook profile access was sought. So there was an opt-in saying, thank you for taking out this survey, thank you for shaping the future of D-Max or Eve. Would you mind if we also took certain bits of information off your Facebook account? And there's a logic to how that's structured, because by asking your customer general questions first, you're setting the tone for the research, you're letting them feel more relaxed and more part of shaping the future of business. It also means if they immediately opt out and say, no, I don't want to be involved in this, you haven't lost their interest or their data, so you've already established trust with them, and you can do further interviews and further insight with them without the appended data. But we find that this format's incredibly successful. So once you set the tone, you've asked those questions, you can then ask them if they are comfortable with adding that Facebook data. So what happened here is after the survey was finished, up to 62%, in fact exactly 62% of people were happy to share their Facebook information, and we'll show how that was brought in. So if we go on to the next slide, what's interesting here is in traditional research, they were able to say, okay, 51% of our males are targets, 37% are potentials, and the same amongst the female audience. But what was critical was that they appended this social media data. So if we go to the next slide, what we'll see is these are the social media data appends that if a community member has specifically given consent, you can use. Now, they obviously sit into 4 broad themes: demographics, so gender, how old you are, where you live, activity, what is your consumer doing when, likes, the games, the groups, interests, that consumer, and finally, relationships. So the influence sphere that they may have with friends and family, and key, this might be a critical attribute for your research. Now, from these, clients can build a much more rich segmentation, and we won't expose obviously the modelling that Discovery did, but what's interesting, they were then able to add much more depth to that original premise, if you like, from the original survey, was that they fit broadly into prospects and targets, well, actual potential and targets, and actually by adding this segmentation, they were able to segment the males into 8 segments, which was of interest to them, and the same with the females. So the DMAX and the Eve customers split into these segments. And again, what they could then see is, okay, which is the most important of these segments to us? Which are the ones we need to be talking to in the right language at the right time to have the most influence? And they could pull out those 2 elements. So what they found was that there were 2 key segments, which were the entertainment junkies, which were super fans of about 16% of the male segment, and then there were the empowered super fans for the females, which was about 18% of their audience. So they were able to really specifically hone in on who they should be talking to and how they should be talking to them. Okay, let's bounce on. So I think the other sort of third most prevalent way of recruiting an audience, and the why we focused on recruiting the audience is because once you recruit, the audience recruitment channel gives you the type of data you'll be able to pull out. So again, you can see a real broad range of customers here: public sector, education institutes, manufacturers, and also brands that are looking to build what we would call sort of unbranded or non-branded communities. What we're doing here is we can build a customer group that is just either buyers of a certain product type or enthusiasts in a certain activity. And what it does, it means you can then, if you have it effectively unbranded, you can then do very good research into where you sit in your competitor landscape, where you sit between your competitors, and actually you can do some really good analysis of what's going on in that the broader market in which you sit. So it also occurs actually when there's no direct relationship between the manufacturer and its end customers. So you actually see people who sometimes there's a disconnect either through retailers or because they're white labeling their produce and they want to find out where they sit in the marketplace. So once you've built that community, especially if it's amongst key buyers, you can do very fast turn research in terms of NPD work, new product development, creative testing within a predefined audience, and it gives you a speed that you wouldn't normally see. What you normally see is if you're targeting a very specific sector, you see delays in field work, you see delays in getting results back. And also the good news is with the community, if you spit this thing out on social media, if you use a self-service scripting tool just to fire out to your customer database, it's very difficult to append all that other information and that longitudinal data. So by building a community of customers, you can then really append longitudinal information and drive that forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into one example. So there's a client we work with called Moy Park. Now, not many people have heard of Moy Park unless they're in the food industry, where they're one of the largest in the UK, the top 10. They employ more than 10,000 people, and they effectively produce chicken products for all the UK's leading multiple grocery retailers. And what they decided is because they are fairly invisible, that they wanted to build an audience of grocery shoppers that was on tap so that they could then get answers back from specific buyers, as in customers, in specific retailers. So then it gave them a real advantage. It meant they could start responding very, very quickly to market changes, the ones we alluded to at the beginning. There's barely a week goes by where there isn't something influencing consumer buying habits. So they could dip very quickly into how these particular events were actually changing and influencing their buyers. I think what's most interesting also is that they could use it to give them a real commercial edge in negotiations, because they were able to say to the purchasers at the big retailers, so at Tesco's, at Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's, they could say, actually, we've already asked your customers what they think of our brand compared to our competitors' brands. So it gave them a real standout and point of differentiation. It also meant they could say, actually, we've also checked that the customers are comfortable paying that amount of money for these products. So they're prepared to pay a premium for our product, which is very powerful when you're arguing sometimes around pence that make a critical impact on your margin. So again, the true ROI of this community has been giving them a better negotiation position and a much better market knowledge. So they're not going into these negotiations with the big retailers blind. It's also meant they've been able to develop some incredible products in advance for the retailers. They've been able to say, actually, we've built this particular sandwich range. We know it's going to be a hit with your customers because we've already tested it. So this advanced, what we call in-home user testing, but the advanced testing of products and going in with complete confidence that these products are really working for the consumer. Okay, so that's probably enough examples. What I'm going to do, I think Tom said we'd get through this in half an hour and we're 32 minutes in. I'm just going to recap, because what I've tried to do with this is show the real benefits of branded communities. So it's about faster, deeper insight. Frankly, it reduced costs in many cases. We've seen the benefits of certain recruitment sources. So whether that be embedding a community in Facebook, which can add real context to your segmentations, using customer data, which enables obviously another context and prioritization for recommendation, or building a non-branded community panel that can really give you an advantage because you know how your brand sits in relation to its competitors. And I suppose the one thing I haven't touched on actually is, this is all the benefits of communities, is why I use Toluna. And I was at a customer event this morning and sitting with some of our clients, and it's interesting because each of our clients has different motivations. I think some like the blend of DIY and assisted DIY, so we will literally give customers with significant training the keys to our technology and let them drive themselves. Equally, we will happily handhold and do all of the work for our customers. So we've got an expert team based in London that give that support, and I think that's one real benefit is that flexibility. There's also the scale, so we've hosted panels from 600 to 6 million with multiple language support, so we can do it. The P&G example was in the UK and Russia, where they're currently doing in-home user tests for cleaning products, and also we have 24-hour support because we're a global organisation. There's also a raft of tools that are coming online. So we've got some incredible analytics and scripting and sampling tools that really do answer this need for real-time analysis. And I think the pressure on time and the pressure on budgets, as we were alluding to at the beginning, is greater than ever. We've also got a completely transparent pricing structure, which is interesting because I think there's a tendency, because of the nature of communities, that you can involve in a laundry list of costs that we've tried to avoid. So I think the final thing to say is when we looked at that grit report, and there was, let's say, everything from mobile to text analytics to webcam interviews to qual, is that communities really can offer all of those technologies, and they can blend all those technologies. And then when you layer them in with these other levels of data, they can become incredibly powerful. So I will hand it over to the floor now for any questions. Can I just say thank you to everyone for listening in. I know everyone is time pressured these days, so if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to raise them.
Thanks, Paul. Really informative there, and great to see so many sort of case studies and the concrete links with ROI as well. As Paul just said, if you could hit the submit a question tab at the top of the player, please do. It's a great opportunity to get some personal insight. But I mean, if I could just kick off with one, I mean, you've given a lot of examples of the benefits of communities. I mean, is this a trend now that you think is a permanent shift for brands?
It's a great question. So, as I said, when I joined 5 years ago, it was a thing of interest. We've actually run a community for more than 10 years globally, and it was seen, I think, as something originally that was quite quirky and of interest, and then Facebook, etc., happened, communities got put at the centre of everything everyone was doing, and then big data became a buzzword, and I think communities have become have actually just hit that happy medium of communities are hot, adding transactional data or layering data is hot. So I can't see anything stopping the growth of them, actually. I think what's good news is people are using them far more intelligently, and I think, as I say, there was a time when having a community was seen as enough. And the examples we've talked to the clients, and if you ever see our clients present the stuff, it really is affecting that. It's actually driving their business forward now, which is great. And I think adding those layers of data, so the transactional data, the social media data, gives them complete confidence in their decision making, so they can say, actually, this isn't just someone saying they feel this. Here's all the proof behind it. So no, I think it is. I think it isn't a wave that's come to shore. I think it will continue to grow, and all the figures from things like the GRIP report are showing that as well, actually. So whether they'll exist purely online, I mean, you're seeing mobile communities pop up everywhere as well. Next year, we're actually launching a product which will offer the people the ability to log on online and launch their own community in hours. So I think things will get quicker, more nimble, and it will continue to grow. Yeah.
And a question that's just come through. I mean, the communities that you've mentioned are obviously largely online. In countries such as India, where the internet penetration and usage obviously isn't as high, how can you kind of connect this sort of strategy to those markets?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think the industry's always, so the research industry's always had a slight struggle where you can get a face-to-face interview completed in some markets, say for $1, and then the advocacy behind online was always it's quicker and it's better value, and actually face-to-face interviewing offers real representativity and real benefits, and it's entirely valid. I think what we're finding now is that even in emerging markets, so we've recently just started to launch communities in places like Vietnam that are coming online, that online still provides, and mobile, an incredibly quick return. So you won't get a completely representative sample of people back if you recruit through social media or customer lists, but you will find that you'll get data back at an incredible speed with this extra layer of knowledge behind the data, so whether it's the customer loyalty information, whether it's social media information. So yeah, I think you will see growth, and we are seeing growth across the piece. But in our core business, which is online research, we see huge growth in all of those markets, across Asia, Southeast Asia, etc. I don't think it will only grow there. I don't think it will diminish. But we wouldn't do, for example, government research into the impact of aid in rural Punjab. You just wouldn't do it online, and it wouldn't make any sense to. But we tend to find the brands aren't targeting those people anyway. So,
and two very specific questions that have just come in. I mean, first off, again, it's kind of on the international piece, but do you guys have capabilities in markets such as Brazil, India, and the Philippines? And the second question was, are you able to give any examples of cost?
They're both brilliant questions, so I'm going to answer the first one directly. We worked online in virtually every language and virtually every market. So the playbook actually that's on the attachment doesn't have our traditional panel reach on it. But what I would do, if anyone wants to know the markets we're currently operating in, we've got a 24-hour operation. There's about 1,200 of us worldwide. We are already building and have built communities in 46 countries. So we kind of span everywhere, and we're very relaxed in the markets you mentioned. So, Brazil, I think it's Brazil, India, and the Philippines. There shouldn't be a market that flummoxes us. And, we've worked with blue chip brands in certainly most countries. The costing's an interesting question as well. So as I alluded to, you could virtually log online now at TolunaGroup.com, go to our panel portal website, and then take software off the shelf, and that would be incredibly good value, and it would be, it would come with some training, and then you could just have the software. You could then, in theory, recruit off your own means and drive your own community forward. So it can be an incredibly low-cost solution. What we tend to find is people, the example I gave you of that sort of €100,000 mark, really people are investing, I would suggest between early stages, probably £80,000 to £120,000 year one to get things up and running, but that includes getting a lot of research out the door, a lot of consultancy from us, involvement with us. So they would be indicative costs, and then it goes right up to, so this is the old long as a piece of string answer, we have clients that spend well in excess of £1.5 million, £2 million a year with us, but that's when they've embedded this community into the heart of everything they do. So they might be looking at consumer data overlaid with customer visits, CSAT, online CSAT. So it's a vague answer, but the answer is it can be incredibly cost effective, or it can be central to everything you do. So we have a client in the States who are a pharmacy chain, CVS, and our technology drives how their store managers are paid, because the CSAT every day, in fact I think 4 times a day, are uploaded with how they're performing in store. So it just depends on what you're doing. So, but again, if anyone wants to discuss this with us, drop me a line afterwards. I'll happily sit down, look at their needs, and then work out a more specific cost. I'm currently having my roof done, and I feel like I've answered a bit like my builder. But the truth is, it can be very low cost and off the shelf, and we would advise you every step of the way anyway. So look at the best, genuinely, the best route for the brand or the business concerned.
And another question that's just popped in: what would you suggest for countries and markets such as Germany, where there is more of a reluctance to share contact information on social media?
Yeah, we do the largest media segmentation, one of the largest media segmentation projects in the world for a media agency, and we haven't experienced. So you just cover things in Germany. You're meant to get lower, emotional satisfaction scores. We're not sure we've seen that, and you're also meant to have a fear of sharing data. But in the studies we've done, again, I think it's about the brand, the trust in the brand, and the way you set the context for that permission. So if you were just to effectively approach someone with an email and say, give us your data, you get very short shrift in Germany, you get it in most markets, and it's about how you set the context for that. So, when we've actually got 2 offices in Germany, and when we've worked in Germany, we found that there are ways of building that relationship, and a lot depends on the brand and its cut through in that market. So if it's known, it's clearly much easier. And if you're recruiting off, other social media platforms, you can normally achieve the same thing. It would be interesting, actually, I don't know the data, but it'd be interesting to look at opt-in rates, things like sharing data specifically, but I don't have those. But I'll happily dig them out. If the person who asked the question wants to drop me an email, I'll actually find out what the kind of opt-in rates are in Germany for them. But again, I said we do this in most markets, and the key is sort of, setting the context for why you're doing it and being fairly explicit in what you're doing it for.
And obviously the next stage of marketeers, technology is going to just become bread and butter for them. My question's just come in. The gentleman says, I'm teaching a small online class of entrepreneurs about better use of design and business. Aside from that class, where can I build a community?
Oh, I don't know if I understand the question. So hang on, he's got a community. He's got a group of entrepreneurs together. So run me past that again. I didn't quite understand the question.
I think he's just trying to level in on how you can kind of teach this community approach in the classroom to student marketeers.
What a good question that is. Okay, well, there's a couple of things. Again, going back to that playbook has some fairly standard tips and advice, because you can, what would I recommend? If you're looking through that playbook, it gives advice on things like how to recruit off your own list, how to engage, how to, what you should be looking for from a community. So, and also how to check if you're like your community or your panel is healthy. So what I'd probably do is start there, and then honestly, I think we'd happily send one of our team down. If he wants us to send one of our tech team down, I'm not sure where his course is run from, but we've got a team in Ealing of great experts who love talking about tech. Well, frankly, we'd happily send one down to show what can be done with communities, what best practice looks like. and and help out, because it's something we eat, sleep and breathe, and we'd love to pass on help and advice to students. We actually tend to find that we've got an automated tool called Quick Surveys, and we tend to find a lot of students use that now for their own survey needs. And next year we're launching this self-serve community tool, and it'll be interesting to see if that has cut through from students as well, because the Quick Surveys tool is actually free if you're sending out your own data. So it works. We find it's just quite a good way of getting people in marketing to get used to doing research, and that's obviously amongst their own lists and communities. But we'd happily help out. And again, if they want to contact me after, I'll certainly, we could send one of the team down for however long they want and talk them through what we're doing and how we're doing it and how people could do it. So
hopefully we can link you guys up. No, once again, just to remind you guys, please do keep asking questions. We've got time for a few more, so yeah, please get them in. But another question that's just come in. Is it possible to identify which research tools the community platform is outdoing? Is it also possible to quantify savings on research spend?
Yes. So I've got of scampered through it, but if you've got a difficult target, so the way the research industry tends to quantify a target is by instance rate. So how many of these people are they in a general population? And an example would be if you wanted to target the primary decision maker in grocery shopping, so the person who did most of the grocery shopping, they would have an instance rate in the general population. And if you look at the example we have in Moy Park, it was beneficial to them to build a community of those people, because dipping in, phoning up Toluna's account team and saying, I'd like to ask 1,000 people of this instance rate these questions and have the answers back by next Friday, has a cost, and there'll be a cost per each interview, cost for scripting, cost for everything else. And what you can do very quickly is with, if you take a piece of Toluna technology, if you script the survey yourself, then there's no cost. If you provide the sample yourself, there's no hosting fees. So you can very quickly build the cost-benefit analysis. So what we did, and I always do this Gruppo Vintocottore, but the Italian media owners, what was interesting was that's exactly what they did. They basically said, look, how much can we save by moving this into a community? So yes, you can map it out, and especially if you've got an existing research budget that you're spending on certain things, it's quite straightforward to say which of these elements, and it won't be all of them, but which of these elements could be brought online. So the cost-benefit analysis is good. There was another question there, Tom, as well. You asked two at the same time. What was the first bit? The first bit was...
yeah, I think, is it possible to identify the research tools community platform is sort of outdoing itself in? I guess they mean the most popular research tools.
Yeah, that's right. So what's tending to happen is, and it depends what you mean by outdoing, but you could script a survey now in any number of free scripting tools. You could send it out to a list, your own customer list, and you get results back. And that would be fine. I think where I would define that it's definitely outdoing that type of research is because once you've built a community, you can get those results back, and you can look at that respondent or community members or customers' reactions over time. So because it threads it all together, it's not just a one-off hit. You can automatically start saying, actually, I've asked these questions of my entire database, and then you can start building segments very, very quickly out of those responses. So our team worked with, I think I mentioned a few of the clients, but BBC Worldwide, Sony, a whole raft of clients, to build those segmentations for them, so they're overlaid on their entire panel. And then in terms of their community, they can just go, bang, I want to talk to these people, which is incredibly powerful. And you can start looking at their results. We have an analytics tool called Toluna Analytics. You can start looking at their results over time as well. So when you say outdo, I think it's that ability to really contextualize stuff that outdoes the traditional I'll do it myself tool, and in terms of the cost benefits, they are significant over what we regarded now as traditional online research.
Sure, and what would you say is the best kind of way to engage directly with a community? I mean, is there an element of risk? Do you have to kind of be quite truthful with your brand voice? I mean, when you start to engage with these communities you've built up, what way should people go about it?
Yeah, no, that's true. So I touched on it with the gaming companies and also with, it happens a lot where you've got this very vocal fan base, or otherwise it could be a very critical fan base on your social media site. And when we look at the recruitment from social media, I think we got a record number of responses where we used the Doctor Who fan page a few years back to recruit a global community of Doctor Who enthusiasts. And we literally just put a post up saying, "Would you like to shape the future of Doctor Who?" And clearly a gazillion people said yes. But what's interesting is that if you're driving that forward. Sorry, Tom, I forgot your question. Where were you? Sorry, where were you?
No worries. No, what's the best way to directly engage with that community?
You've got very broad social media respondent base, and the beautiful thing about recruiting them into a community is you then take them off into different rooms, if you like, and you can engage with them on topics that are hot. You can moderate discussions, but you can really shape those discussions. So there will be burning issues people want to talk about that may not be completely relevant to your brand. So you can host discussion on that, but it might be the hot topic for your community. But critically, you can then ask people to take part in other debates, other discussions, if you like, in other rooms that are specific on topics you want to get to the bottom of. And you've also got their historic data about how they felt about a brand or what they were buying. So I think that the critical thing with engagement is making sure that you are clearly listening to them, but you're also guiding the discussions to where you want to get them to. We work with a clothing retailer in the US, and they're constantly hosting moderated debates about amongst mums buying clothes for kids, about what's hot next. Would they wear wearable technology? Would that make them feel weird? Is that a good thing? And they're constantly hosting these debates, which are shaping their future strategy amongst their core customers. So I think, again, it depends on your customer base, it depends on the engagement with the brand, but it's just about making sure that both you and the community members getting what they want out of that community experience.
And just one final question. Just having access to your own community inform better marketing, and on the data end as well. Obviously, market research can be quite a pricey, time-consuming procedure. Can this kind of cut that out a bit and inform you, with really useful data?
Yeah, we've seen it done a lot actually with creative pre-testing, where if you have an audience you want to appeal to, and you're concerned that or you've got 2 or 3 bits of creative that you want to test against each other and check they're cutting through, it can have a critical influence in that life cycle of creative development. The same with product development. The work that P&G are doing with us in the UK and Russia is about product development. We find that it can clearly shape, I'd say, the whole marketing life cycle. At the same beginning of the deck is, really, it can shape new product development. It can certainly shape the messaging, and it can also shape, how the media is going out, and also where the media is being targeted. So, making sure it's going to the right places.
And we've actually just got one final question that just popped in. We want to give everybody a chance. The person asked, data collection through this tool, it sounds quite large and complex. Can you talk a bit more through about who analyzes this data and how quick the process actually is to getting to that final decision?
Yeah, of course. So it depends on what questions you're asking and of whom. But the time frames I alluded to earlier about, people were literally firing out 2 or 3 questions to their most valuable customers or to any of their customers and getting access analysis back can be within hours, because it depends on the way you structured your questions, and it isn't a laborious process. Generally the clients we work with do it. One of the primary drivers is speed. One of the primary drivers is if you were doing this for traditional online research, you'd send out a survey to someone to script. They then put it into field. You'd then get it back. This is instantaneous, and if people want advice on how to script those surveys, we'll happily work through them with our team. As I say, they'll happily give advice on what's required. For the larger segmentations, they tend to be driven by the research and insight teams of those brands. So they're either using a market research agency to do that, or they've got someone in-house who's doing it. So if you're doing a really complex segmentation, That's not something that would happen in seconds. Once, bizarrely, you've got the question format sorted, overlaying it on the panel is incredibly quick because you just effectively serve, say, 60 or 70 questions or how many questions you decide are relevant over the panel, and then it immediately gives you the segmentation. So you can segment quite quickly, but I'd say the research design and methodology will still take at the same time. But the responses are virtually instant. As I say, I was with a couple of our communities guys this morning, our customers, and they are using it for exactly that, getting stuff back quicker than they ever could before.
Thanks so much for that, Paul. I think that brings all of our questions to the end, and thanks for such an informative presentation on what's becoming a real important tool for marketeers. If you'd like to just conclude this out, and thank you again.
No, that's great. Thanks, Tom. Listen, if anyone wants to get in touch, my email address is on the screen. Please feel free to download the playbook, and if you want any further tips or advice from the Toluna team, just let me know. Thanks so much indeed, Tom.